Coming up on Wrestling Life.
Around the time when we booked these big leisure centre shows, we had kind of a Chris Masters, Chavo Guerrero. We had Bad Influence, Hardcore Holly. It was just this kind of usual suspects of imported talent, which were amazing, and we posed for a photo with them. So me, Stephen Lee, posed for a photo, and then our regular guys at the other end of the locker room lined up and took a photo of themselves, basically going, "You didn't pose with us, did you?" And that was a massive learning curve for me.
Welcome to Wrestling Life with Ben Veal, the show that features real talk from real talent.
Hello and welcome to the second episode of Wrestling Life with me, your host with the most, the man of the hour, the tower of podcasting power, Ben Veal. Well, we went big with our debut episode with a fantastic conversation with the one and only second to none Nathan Cruz. Nathan shared all with me about his 2 decades travelling the globe as a pro wrestler and also the ups and downs along his journey of pursuing his dream to WWE. I hugely recommend you check it out if you haven't done so already. So now it's on to the tricky sequel. Will this episode knock it out of the park like the cinematic masterclass that was The Godfather Part 2? Or will it sink to the bottom of the ocean like Speed 2 Cruise Control? Only time will tell, but I have faith in my guest today, who's joining me as a man that I've known for many, many years now, going right back to the early days of when he launched his very own pro wrestling UK promotion back in 2011. Future Pro Wrestling has gone from strength to strength over the last decade, and it's been a real joy to follow that journey. My guest has worked with and helped to showcase some of the biggest and brightest talents in pro wrestling today. So, Mr. Matt Burden from FPW, thank you for joining me on Wrestling Life. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thank you for throwing in movie references right off the bat. Really appreciate it. I thought you were going to go Aliens, and then for the poor example, I thought you were going to maybe do, I don't know, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. There were so many that but those were strong, so I appreciate it.
Thank you. I like Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. I'm not going to throw that under the bus.
No, they changed the rules. They brought him out of the drip. Nah, that's for another time.
That's another podcast. That is not us. So look, we're here today. I think this is going to be a really cool and different episode because we're going to talk actually about, what it's like to actually go to live your dream in terms of setting up a promotion and whether or not that actually is a dream or a bit of a nightmare. But let's start with where you are today. Yeah, Future Pro Wrestling recently relaunched after a spell away from the ring. What was your comeback show like, Matt, and how's it been received so far?
It was amazing. I think we didn't know what to expect at all. We stopped doing shows, I guess, in the borough of Sutton in 2016. Had a very brief comeback, a one-show comeback the week before lockdown. Brilliantly timed. And we did that one in Crawley. So we were out of Sutton. But even that show, I can remember, we'd been away for 4 years, come out the curtain, and there's Sutton has turned up in Crawley, and that was an amazing feeling. And it was a good show, but we were still, I think, putting a roster together at that time wasn't easy. Budget as well. So it was it was good. But I think we were, okay, if this is going to carry on, there are certain things that we would change. And then, of course, lockdown happened. We go away for another 3 years, which people are more than used to by this point. Then to kind of set foot in a room in Sutton after that length of time away and kind of go 50-50 new fans, previous fans, amazing. The noise was incredible. The feedback from the boys, as always, with our crowd is it's a very the feedback we always get is it's a very unique environment, in that it seems that parents are turning up expecting not to enjoy themselves, and the kids are there to enjoy themselves. And then I always equate it to the experience of me at the age of 10 watching Commando for the first time, without my parents'
Not Suburban Commando,
knowledge.
just to clarify.
Not Suburban Commando, no. Yeah,
Classic.
not Suburban Commando, which I did see in the cinema. But it's that kind of, oh, this is really good, and they're just looking at their parents, going, this is cool, right? This is fine for me to watch. Yes, and we're going to enjoy it, together. And it was that noise that we seemed to be able to replicate. The feedback's been phenomenal. We advertised it as one night only, ! Because in truth, we really weren't sure until we started to see, ticket sales and response. And then, we put tickets on sale for the next one halfway through the show. I announced that we were doing another one right at the end, and I think we sold 30 tickets on the drive from the venue to my home. So yeah, it was a lovely response. The boys immediately were like, wouldn't it be great to just fill this place all the time? But you may well be outgrowing this place quite soon. I love to just fill a small venue. So yeah, it was brilliant. It was brilliant, Ben.
How would you describe, you talked about the energy there, how would you describe a future pro wrestling show? What is it that sets FPW apart from all the other promotions that are out there?
When we started it, we did the rounds. So we went to, I wasn't an indie wrestler guy at all. I was very, very new to it. My gateway in was WWE and WCW. So it was a bit of an education, looking at different promotions, seeing how the ring announcer works, seeing who's working to hard cam, seeing what their interaction with the crowd was. And then I started to go to some TNA shows, house shows with Lee. And what I noticed was that on a TNA house show, Jeremy Borash is the king of that building, and the crowd respond to him, and he works, well, at that time, all of the sides of the ring. And that was the thing that I want to do. That I want to be that guy for this. So my mantra has always been that a ring is a four-sided stage. I'm a nightmare for any hard cam operator. I am. I know this. So for me, I'm eye contact. I'm riffing off the crowd, and I try to engage with people and encourage them to see me as a conduit to the product. So, or not inadvertently, but I think from our first show, it was, you guys turned up and you paid your money. We want this to feel like a family. I used to be able to say League Two football club, but Wrexham's kind of spoilt that. But I wanted it to feel as rabidly addictive as lower league football and hockey, where people know the names of the wrestlers, people are turning up and wearing the company logo. We want them to support the guys as well, but I want that brand association where people are proud to turn up to an FPW show, as opposed to, oh, there's wrestling in town. Is it FPW? No. Okay, I'm all right. FPW is my, thing. So it's very unique in that people will cheer for anything. Whoever comes through the curtain. We had an instance where the caretaker inadvertently walked out of the curtain at the last show as I was saying, the next wrestler, please. And Norman walked out and he got the biggest pop of the evening. Little bit of housekeeping. It was our first show, but that's the kind of thing that you expect.
He'll be back for more.
Yeah, he'll be back for more. Absolutely. So yeah, it's really difficult to describe. The best example I can use was back in, it was probably 2016. We did put on Tommy End and Will Ospreay. They also did they then went on, I think, the next weekend and did that match at Progress as well. And there was quite a lot of crossover in crowd between Progress and FPW during that time. And of course, there's a chant that Tommy people would chant for Tommy. And Progress is a very adult product, and FPW is we always say family friendly. So for me, it's kind of 12A PG-13. I hate watering it down to like a U to doing it. But the Progress guys that were there, the crowd who were all in their Progress merch, which is great, edited their chant to Tommy freaking end. And that was the respect they had for our room, but was still able to give that energy. And I remember just going up to them straight after the match and just shaking their hands and going, "You're amazing. Thank you so much. You didn't lessen the energy. You just tweaked it a bit."
Which is so nice, because most of us who are here today, most of us who are ardent fans of wrestling, probably most of those crowd that are there at Progress and at FPW and are listening to this podcast today, probably got their start watching WWF wrestling in the early 90s and watching, Doink the Clown and the Repo Man and Crush, and and we laugh a little bit now with nostalgia, but actually it was a safe product to watch when we were 7 or 8 or 9 years old.
Yeah.
And for this industry to actually have a future, a long-term viable future, we need family-friendly products. If it caters fully to us, it dies. So, it's really good that there are promotions like you out there which are committed to putting on something which is suitable for the whole family.
I think it came, but thanks. I think it came out of doing that circuit. At the time, my son was 8, and my daughter was 5. So we'd been to Butlins. It's interesting now, kind of looking back at who I would have seen on that all-star roster at the time, doing the camps, whilst taking my kids along, and watching something where. So first of all, I love the idea that the camps are there to create journeyman wrestlers. And to give people that experience, similar to the comedy circuit, whether it's open mics or whatever it might be. The more ring time, the more stage time you get, the better it will be, and the more intricate things that you'll be able to notice with crowds. My issue with camps will always be, I guess, kind of redcoats involvement, which I think can sometimes water down the product, where the guys have got a plan and then you've got it's nobody's fault at all. You're going on holiday and, oh, look, there's wrestling, I'm going to go. But then you've maybe got a camp leader on a microphone who might think this is all a bit silly, and therefore is commentating, not knowing what really is going on. And so my thing is always in the presentation. My thing is always, oh God, that just makes me shudder, unfortunately. So I think, having sat through a lot of those, my thing was, I want to put a show on that I would want to see, that I was happy with my kids going to see. And then again, cinema wise, it's the equivalent of being able to take my son to Avengers Assemble when that came out. It's like, this. I'm so glad you're the exact right age for this, and I can enjoy it as well, and we can go home and talk about it in the car. And that was what it was. I didn't want awkward conversations in the car. A parent going, "Well, we're not going there again." Whether things were a bit too stiff, or certainly no blood, nothing questionable. No language, but as a perfect a product as we possibly can to cater to everyone in the room. And yeah, due to, I guess, all that return traffic, it seemed to work. So yeah.
And obviously your kids are quite a lot older than that now. You mentioned, the Tommy End versus Will Ospreay match. I know you've invited half of the biggest names in wrestling into your home by now, haven't you, really? Like, over the last 10 years or so. Talk to me about some of the kind of the names, both both international and homegrown, that have made FPW what it is today?
Okay, okay, I like the wording of that question because that will feed into some lessons learned later, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much a lot of what became NXT UK, came through our, were on our shows. Wild Boar, um, Mike Hitchman was on our shows. Yeah, Mark Andrews, Pete Dunne, um, Will, of course. Tommy, we had twice at our shows. Colt Cabana just the once. But yeah, I think some of the names that became these kind of household people, especially in that UK, NXT era, were doing the rounds with everyone. And of course, our product, we would always do we usually do 5 shows a year following the WWE's big pay-per-view schedule, kind of that seasonal schedule, not saturating it at all, not saying we're going to go monthly or we're going to go weekly, because it's just that we're under no illusions here. We're not looking to ruin ourselves and open the doors and there's only 30 people because we've jumped the shark. But yeah, the back catalogue of people that we had through the door was amazing. Being around Zack Sabre Jr. at a very early point, so circa 2011 and 12, sort of seeing him at our shows, having conversations with other wrestlers who had fought him the night before and were still a little bit chopped up. That was always interesting. Yeah, it was a bit of a magical time. And then by association, TNA at the time, this is just before British Boot Camp, were very, very pro getting to know the British promotions they felt that they could trust. And at the time, very flattered to be one of those. I'd be at a Progress show at the Garage when it was 300 people, and Jeremy Borash would turn up with Rockstar Spud, and they would shoot an episode of British Boot Camp there. We'd get invited whenever they came to Wembley to go along. So yeah, if you think my son was 8 when we started, and we ran for at least 5 to 6 years, that childhood was. I'm not going to say he had the best childhood, because that's not for me to say. Even though, please, Joe, in the comments say, "Oh no, you did all right." To watch people make their WWE debuts. So the day Samoa Joe made his WWE debut, he went to school, and it was like, "Oh, that's me and Joe. Look at the size of Samoa Joe's hands," because Samoa Joe waited for us backstage at a British Boot Camp filming, because one of our ring crew guys was working that show, knew Joe, and he went, "You need to wait for this family," and he did. Yeah, the day that Tommy End arrived at the WWE UK tournament, straight away the next day, there's Tommy sitting next to me on a sofa. We played Pokemon Go together. It was a crazy time, and I've got a photo of Lucy and Grado, and at the time we were avid British Boot Camp watchers. We would just watch that every time, and we had our favourites. And Grado was just Lucy's favourite, and we booked him when we did the Leisure Centre shows. I've just got a picture of him drinking a pint in a tracksuit backstage. I'm talking to him, but kind of waist level is my daughter, just in awe. So it was a wonderful time. Martin Stone. The list goes on and on and on. And then of course with other promotions that I ended up working for, being able to be around Keith Lee, Matt Riddle, all of these people, it was a real insight. But the big learning curve for me was, yes, you can get excited about these incredible people, but it's every other match that's on the card that has brought people coming back and back and back. I'll never forget, one of our wrestlers saying to me when I spoke to him on the phone, we thought that FPW was over, or that FPW was about to take a dramatic change when you didn't book Terry Stryker. Now, little did I know that as far as the locker room was concerned, Terry Stryker, who he won't mind me saying, is a lower card heel who people used to shout at and call the Hobbit. That was the thing. People would turn up with signs that said, "You're a Hobbit," and chant Hobbit at him. And he would be in the Pumpkin on a Pole match every year, and he would be the guy. As far as heat goes, he was hated for all the right reasons. And we didn't book him on one of the Leisure Centre shows, which were going to be some of our biggest shows. And it wasn't for any reason. I have no idea why we didn't book him. When we were doing it, putting it all together, we just didn't put him on the card. And somebody quite high up in the locker room called me and went, "Is everything okay?" "Why?" "Terry Stryker's not on the show." "Oh, that hadn't even occurred to me." And that was one of the first times when I kind of went, okay, all of the homegrown talent and the people that people do make signs for are our regular talent, as opposed to the quote unquote imports or the marquee guys who absolutely will bring in, say, not the neutral or the wrestling fan that doesn't necessarily attend all the time. That it is the regular guys that we book month in, month out. Those are the guys that made us and got us to the dance. I remember again around the time when we booked these big Leisure Centre shows, we had kind of a Chris Masters, Chavo Guerrero. We had Bad Influence, Hardcore Holly. It was just this kind of usual suspects of imported talent, which were amazing, and we posed for a photo with them. So me, Steve, and Lee posed for a photo, and then our regular guys at the other end of the locker room lined up and took a photo of themselves, basically going, "You didn't pose with us, did you?" And that was a massive learning curve for me. I remember RJ Singh posted that picture and said, "This looks expensive." And it was. But it was a real, okay, don't be a name dropper, he says, after spending the last 15 minutes you did ask me the question.
I did ask you a question, yeah.
But it was oh God, what did I just do? What did I just do? I've just highlighted these people who have been to the dance, who are now able to just insert themselves into a promotion, make good money, and then go on to the next promotion. But the guys that are there for you every show, they're the guys that we should be pushing. And they're the guys that should be the focus. It's such a balancing act that it was a very humbling experience, for sure.
Well, I guess the key to a marquee attraction is you bring them in to elevate. So you bring them in to put over one of your top talent, to hopefully give a bit of training or support to a few of the new guys, and to bring in, to bring some new eyeballs to the product.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that really sets FPW apart is this longevity of homegrown talent. You've got names there that have been with you since the beginning. For any of our audience that isn't really familiar with FPW, hasn't been to a show, what are some of the kind of names and talents that are synonymous with Future Pro Wrestling?
I mean, RJ Singh has been on, I'd say, the majority of shows. First started with us during the time when he was part of a tag team called the Bangra Knights, who started as heels for us. And on the first show we ever did, May 2011, it was the tag match that absolutely brought the house down. And it was the Bangra Knights versus Mark Haskins and Marty Scurll. And that was the match that everyone was talking about. It was. Johnny Storm was on that first show as well. And then very quickly, Greg Burridge arrives at the next show. So on our summer show, 2011, Greg Burridge arrives with orange pants with fluffy dice on the front, and I'm Sexy and I Know It is the theme song. And my dad brain, when Steve said this is what he does, I went, absolutely not. What pelvic thrusts? What are you doing? And you just have to be in the environment with Greg, and see him roll a heel to the outside and then ride him around the ring like a horse and invite children to chop their chests and dance with the elderly ladies at ringside. It was infectious, and people started to bring signs in the shape of giant orange pants and actually super glue car fluffy dice to the front of them. And it became what Greg does. So Greg immediately was over. Shah Samuels, we had Shah, I think we brought in 2 years in, I think circa 2013. Still to this day, the one wrestler that genuinely scared me, truly scared me. I always say there's two bits of advice that I've had from wrestlers that I've kind of taken to heart. One was from RJ after the first show. I said, "What did you think?" As I ask all the wrestlers all the time, and he said, "Wear a suit, talk less." That's what he said. And the first show I was in, chinos and a short sleeve shirt, thinking, I don't need to do that. And I had all these cue cards with our sponsors on and messages of good luck from people across the world, and thought that the crowd would want to hear that. Don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that.
They're not here for you.
It was bad. It was really bad. Yeah. And I think I pushed it one more show before I wore a suit, and then in the October of 2011, I wore a suit and never looked back. And I constantly say to him that's that. For Shah, Shah's gimmick of the East End Butcher is the alpha male East End guy that if you're in a pub and you knock into him and you knock his pint over, you think you might get a pull cue over the head. That's how as a heel, that's how you're supposed to feel. And he was doing his very loud
oi, oi.
Oi, oi. He was doing his very loud entrance, and I tend to hang around. I watch the show from the audience, so I stand in amongst the audience and respond with them. And I was in the way. He was coming around, and he went, "Oh, get away!" And I laughed. I just laughed because humor is a defense mechanism, and I responded badly. And he pulled me in. He just grabbed me by the tie and pulled me in, and he went, "Don't laugh." And that was it, just in my ear. And that was a light bulb moment. It was, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely
on board
right.
For this. You're in this journey, and when you're there, you're there. Yeah, and you as Matt Burden are as much part of that experience as every other talent, aren't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And yeah. So from a being part of a show point of view, and I think Shah realized this, or whether he'll admit to it or not, subconsciously realized this. So then, if I was ever announcing, it's very easy to just give me a quick slap or push me in a corner and pull my tie so that I can't get it off and have to cut it off. Bits and pieces like that. But yeah, those guys for sure. Terry Stryker, of course. I have to say, he wrestled for a few promotions, but then became a very regular wrestler for us. And his character, the guy that you love to hate, just became such a regular, expected thing for our crowd. It was just the second he came out of that curtain, it's bear, and it actually came out of an interaction we had. He started off as a face for us, our first show. There's a guy called Kid Pride. Come on, kids, high five. And me and him had a misunderstanding. We're actually very good friends now. We had a misunderstanding where he was cutting a promo, and I didn't feel it was going well. And again, me as a naive ring announcer with unfortunately a comedy brain, I inadvertently criticised the promo live on mic. He went back at me. I then went back at him. after the show, it was, if you ever mug me off like that again, you and me are going to have words. And I remember going, I don't want this person in my building. And then realised actually that was my fault. And then spoke to Steve and said, what if we turn him heel and use this energy? And that's what we did. And we did this thing where he was very anti-nerd culture. And of course, I'm super pro nerd culture. So I would get the kids to chant exterminate or Hobbit or whatever it is that we're doing. This was at the height of, I think, the Matt Smith Doctor Who run as well. And it worked. It worked, so well. So yeah, he was definitely, synonymous with our product. And then in, the later years, I guess, Yestin Reese came in, Joel Redman came in, Martin Stone came in. We had them as a as a 3-man unit. What a unit! How we had them as the alpha males. Sold a lot of alpha males t-shirts to mums. Shocker. And then the likes of Paul Robinson and Will Ospreay, Noam Dar at that time as well. This is kind of height of Noam at Progress as well before he goes off. So yeah, I would say those were the linchpins. And then in the latter years, the 2016, just before we finished, Rishi Ghosh, Malik, we're teaming up against Ross. It's been an absolute gallery of talent that we've been really proud to be associated with.
And more to come as well.
Yeah.
So you've mentioned a couple of times in passing, you've mentioned Steve, you've mentioned Lee. Of course, this is Steve Evans and Lee Elmer, your other co-founders, but they're much more than co-founders. They're also your childhood friends. Talk to me about, where do you go from being we love wrestling to, we're going to set up a promotion? How's that work?
Well, Lee's responsible for me being introduced to wrestling in the first place. My first year at high school. So I'm part of the generation where they did primary, middle, and high before so I'm part of that. So I go to high school, I guess, is it 12? You go to a high school at 12?
13.
That year?
Yeah,
13.
12, 13, yeah.
So I'm 12, 13, walk into class first day, there's an empty chair, I sit down, there's a guy next to me, wearing ridiculously polished black shoes that have got a white V shape, like a Frank Sinatra, when Henry is young at the beginning of Goodfellas.
Yeah,
he was wearing those.
Nice.
This is a fancy guy. Sat down next to him, and he was sketching on the front of his English book already. So he was drawing on the front of his English book, and I looked over, and he was drawing the Ultimate Warrior symbol on his exercise book, and I had no frame of reference for it. I wasn't aware of wrestling as a thing, and that was the first thing I ever said to Lee, to anyone. I say to anyone. Me and Steve went to middle school together, and we got the bus to high school together on that first day. He got put in a different class. I got put in a class with Lee. I sat down next to him and just said, "What's that?" And he looked absolutely disgusted. It was like he'd licked earwax.
How dare you?
He went, "What?" And I went, "What's that?" And he went, "That's the Ultimate Warrior's face paint." And he had different ones. So he had all the different, all his favorite iterations. Ultimate Warrior was his guy. And I went, "That looks really cool." And he went, "Do you not know about wrestling?" No. And I think it was probably the next day. I think he said, do you want to come around my house? I'll show you what this is. And of course, no mobile phones. So I went, okay, I can't go today. I'll go home, clear it with my mum. I've made a friend. And then wrestling friend. And then the next day, straight around his house, Silver Vision compilation video goes on. There you go. This is WrestleMania 6. Let's work backwards. And that was kind of it. And then, of course, Blockbuster Video opens, and they have a section. So I get caught up really quickly, and it was those covers. The logos for the big events were so for my brain, eye grabbing. The Survivor Series covers I always loved because they would put the rosters on the front, like this team versus
the team
this
of
team.
4. Yeah, perfect.
And so me and Lee, that was our thing. Straight away, the sticker book that came out around the time of SummerSlam '92, and then the Las Vegas outside WrestleMania, where
WrestleMania 9,
Yokozuna and Hulk's got a black eye and there's an elephant.
This episode of Wrestling Life is brought to you in partnership with our friends over at Legacy Sports Nutrition. Take your physical and mental performance to the next level with Test X9, the natural testosterone booster. Clinically proven, Test X9 from Legacy Sports Nutrition is NSF certified, third-party lab tested, and made in the US of A. And it's brought to you by friends of the show, 3-time world champion Nick Aldis and 10-time world champion Mickie James. Nick developed and uses these products himself, so you know they work, and he shows you how over at legacysubs.com, with links to clinical studies on each of the 9 key ingredients. No bull, no bro science, just facts. It's time to level up your strength, energy, libido and drive now with Test X9 from Legacy Sports Nutrition. And if you want to really level up, go for the ultimate test stack, adding T-Assist, a pro-grade estrogen inhibitor and test enhancer, and the best-selling sleep aid Recovery PM, and discover why improving your sleep is the key to unlocking your mental and physical potential. So stop settling for average. Go to legacysubs.com now and use the promo code WrestlingLife for 10% off your entire order. That's promo code WrestlingLife. And if you subscribe to have it shipped every 30 days, you can still get the discount every single time. So head on over now to legacysubs.com and level up with Legacy. Yep. And togas. World's largest toga party.
Yeah, Bobby Heenan back to front on an elephant.
I have a massive soft spot for that WrestleMania because that was the first one I ever watched before I then worked my way back through the back catalogue. So that's the first I watched as a fan.
Gotcha.
And so at the time I thought this is like the best thing I've ever seen. And then you watch it in the context of everything else, and you're like, well, what's going on? What are my eyes seeing?
Yeah.
Also, I don't think it's a single, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm sure other people will, I'm not sure there's a single clean finish in that entire WrestleMania, apart from, I think Razor Ramon beats Bob Backlund in about 2 minutes. But I think every other match from that has some kind of gimmick end.
But equally, you're putting on a wrestling event with those characters in Vegas.
Yeah.
I'm now a massive hockey fan. Vegas have a hockey team, and that is taken into account on road trips by managers. They have to control their guys because if you want them to perform the next day, don't go out, boys.
Yeah.
But so it would have been that era. So me and Lee become best friends. Super Nintendo. I remember getting a phone call from Lee at 7 a.m. on a Saturday. My mum goes, "It's Lee. I've just rented Street Fighter 2 Turbo for the Super Nintendo. It came out yesterday. I haven't slept. Do you want to come round?" Yes. That's our friendship. That's what we have in common. He was the first guy to show me Nirvana's "Smells Like Teen Spirit" video on MTV because he recorded it and was obsessed with it. I go straight around his house and I'm watching that. So Lee was the guy that had the best Sky package. He had a Super Nintendo with a Magicom underneath so that he could rip games.
Wow.
He was that friend. And so he would be the guy that I would go and watch I'd stay up and watch pay-per-views with. I watched King of the Ring 99 at his house live. He nudged me because I'd fallen asleep just as Taker is on top of the ring. And what have I missed? It's like, this guy, oh my, so those are my wrestling memories with Lee. With Steve, we went to high school together for quite a short period of time, and Steve was kind of an enforcer for me. Nobody really messed with the nerds because you had this tower behind us, which was lovely.
He's a big dude.
He's a big dude. But I think he then got expelled or suspended for something. I'm sure there was a fight involved. And Steve then left my high school life, and it was me and Lee thick as thieves. But we kept in touch over the years. I subsequently then started working at Blockbuster in Mitcham with Lee. Steve's a customer. We keep in touch constantly. Little did I know was that in his 20s, he decided to train as a wrestler.
Right. Okay.
And started going to training sessions, and that's how we met Johnny Storm, Terry Stryker, and started to kind of make all of these contacts. I then try to get into stand up by trying to intern for not radio, but I interned, I guess, at Hamley's toy store. I've got a radio station on the top floor. And I was trying to somehow get into doing comedy, and a mutual friend put me together with the guy that runs that station, and so I would spend my day off every week going down there and recording bits for their products that was pumped to all 8 floors, and it was great experience. And then I started to try to train myself to record material to camera, and tried to do that on YouTube, early doors of YouTube. And on my 30th birthday party, my wife threw me a party, because she's amazing, and invited people from my past, and invited Lee and Steve, and we reconnected, went out a few times, and then Steve said, I've been watching what you've been doing. I'm out of wrestling, but I've just wrestled a show to see if I could get back into it, and there were 20 people there, and I've got a lot of ideas of how I would make that better. If I did that, would you be interested in ring announcing? And my brain immediately just went like, I don't want to speak for every wrestling fan in the world. Everyone has their favorite entrance music. Stone Cold Steve Austin's Glass Break goes through my head twice a week. Yep. If I drink a bottle of Evian, Triple H is in my head. I think Finn Balor's entrance music is the best entrance music ever written, and I hum it incessantly. We live with all of these wrestling things in our head, and we have fantasies of popping the curtain. And who doesn't want that? So quite apart from it being useful and potentially a means to an end, to this will get me in front of people, it will help me learn how to work a crowd, potentially get me over some stage fright and get me into comedy. Absolutely, it's fulfilling a childhood dream. The Ultimate Warrior's music's amazing, but I'd be blowing by the time I got to the to the ring as well. So immediately.
Just you mentioned that, has it helped with your stand-up comedy? Because I know now you're now touring with stand-up, aren't you? You've done quite a few shows. Has it helped you? Do you think without wrestling you wouldn't be able to do it? Or
definitely, and again, I'm sure we'll talk about imposter syndrome at some point. But yeah, I've run shows. So I've ran a promotion similar to the way that we did the wrestling, 4 to 5 shows a year. I've done some charity shows. I've taken bookings here and there. But yeah, I always, when people say, "Oh, you're a stand-up comedian," I always have to correct and say, "No, I'm not a stand-up comedian, but I can do stand-up." I always differentiate them in my head, because to me, if you're a stand-up comedian, you're driving to Birmingham twice a week, or you're touring the country and you've got hundreds of gigs under your belt. For me, it's a thing that I have done, and I'd like to think I've done it to a good standard. I have the ability to do it. But without wrestling, definitely I would be far more behind, or I'd just be getting up the courage to do it now. Wrestling's helped me shake the nerves for sure. It's a very structured way of having a similar interaction with an audience that you do with comedy. With comedy, you haven't gone out unless you are cutting your set now and bringing the next guy on. You've kind of got to be there for your time. With wrestling, it's the school of on the fly. Things change in wrestling shows all the time. The order of the card can change. An injury can happen. Somebody can be swapped around. A finish can change. That's from an improvisational workshop point of view, it's massively useful. But for me, it's more the interactions with the crowd, knowing when enough is enough, knowing how to build a crowd, knowing what's cheesy, what's not, knowing what we can get away with, getting it out on the biggest laugh, and But if you're struggling, are you ready for the next match? They're not there for the comedy,
As a threesome, you Stephen Lee kind of running this show. Do you have defined roles? As in, does one of you book finishes, for example? Does one of you set the card? Does one of you source for talent, or is it very much this kind of homogenous beast by now?
I think Lee is the most. Lee's the most. Lee will tell you he doesn't do anything. Always. He brought his girlfriend to the show for the first time, so they've been together for quite a while, but not while we've been running shows. And so he I think he said to me, I'm looking forward to her seeing, and he couldn't say what I do, because in his brain he doesn't think that he does anything. He absolutely does. So Steve's pitch will always be, Lee is the wrestling encyclopedia. So if he's trying to explain a finish, he'll liken it to a match, or a storyline from 1993, or he'll pick things out. He does all of our match graphics. He does all of our posters. He puts all of that together. And at the last show, he was gorilla position running all the sound as well. So he's this kind of Swiss Army knife, but his wrestling mind is unparalleled. And that's the kid. That's the guy that was doing all of the different, face paints for Ultimate Warrior. Steve is the man in the van. Steve is the booking the hall, sorting out the insurance, sorting out the food, making sure we've got enough chairs. He drove to Wales to buy 200 chairs because the venue didn't have enough. He's that guy. And as far as booking the talent, Steve is 70% of Future Pro Wrestling.
And that's really interesting, because as an outsider looking in, but as someone who has seen many, many independent promotions go by the wayside very quickly over the last 20 odd years, especially ones in the UK that have run super shows. So, for example, as you were describing, bringing lots of ex-WWE talent in for one big event and selling out a hall, but then you don't really hear from that promotion again. I think the temptation is that wrestling promotions would be run would be run by people like me and Lee. So wrestling encyclopedias who love branding, who love the product. But if you don't have the doers, and if you don't have the practical side down, the practical side is 75% of success, isn't it? Everything else is the window dressing. But if you haven't got the foundation laid for success, it's all going to come unraveled.
Oh, for sure. And it has done. It has done numerous times. And we are by no means a well-oiled machine. But there are three of us there. It's a committee. And we're at a point now with budgeting, with booking, blessed with the errors of the past. Post 2014, we probably never would have come back if. I mean, Steve, I don't want to. Steve won't mind me saying this. So in 2014, we ran three. I'm going to say three because we did two on one day for no reason. Ridiculous. Big leisure centre shows. So we did a Halloween one, and then we did a Christmas one. And the Christmas one, we did two shows on one day. And Steve, by his own admission, was a kid in a candy store with all of these live action figures. And this will put bums on seats. It did put bums on seats, but there's where we making our money. And what an experience. The crowd loved it. we did photo ops, signings, the works. But at the end of the day, if this talent pool versus these seats don't make you X money, then what are we doing? And financially, it was hell. It was really, really bad. But again, I don't say you have to go through that in order to learn from it, but it's very useful. Then when we came back, I was far more involved with booking at Steve's request for a short time, kind of liaising with talent. We actually had to convince the UK talent that we're continuing with our previous direction, that the arena shows aren't the direction that we're going in. We had to make those phone calls and apologize in certain circumstances. That's not going to happen again.
It must feel you always hear the term banded around for boys. I feel quite uncomfortable saying for boys myself as an outsider looking in. You probably feel a little bit more comfortable, years on. But I presumably it was a little bit disrespectful, but actually we've helped you get to this far. Oh, great. So now you're just going to spend lots of money and bring you guys.
Yeah, that's how it felt. And I think the flip side of that coin is that must mean that we were liked, and that this was a promotion that you had creative control to a point. You didn't feel smothered. We allowed people to express themselves within our boundaries, and then we, on this sort of medium-sized scale, and then we switched. And yeah, I've got a lot of, not regret, because again, I'm glad that we went through that experience to learn from it. But that was huge for us, to do the rounds with X amount of guys and go, this is what we did. This is what we're not going to do again. You'll be talking to me for a little bit, and then we'll be, back to normal.
Where do you land on it now, Matt? Because there is definitely an argument for bringing in a known American talent to a show for that marquee value, for the sign-ins, for the photo ops, to get the casual lapsed fan to your organisation. Is that still a tactic that you would now and again employ? Or do you feel that the focus is homegrown, double down on storylines and the talent that you've nurtured?
It's 80-20. That's the ratio it needs to be. It needs to be, I want the people our regulars to turn up with their signs and their T-shirts for the guy that they kind of fell in love with at the last show. But yeah, if we're going to bring somebody else in, one, it has to make sense from a story point of view, and a push point of view to, kind of highlight someone else. But financially, we're in a completely different place now as a world. It really has to work, and so if we were to do that again, it would be one or two. I feel awkward saying two, Ben. But it's not. Here are 13 people you saw on TNA, and we expect you to turn up and clone yourselves to make this worthwhile. Yeah. But again, the environment was different. I like those theatre venues as opposed to the leisure centre venues. But lesson learned. Lesson learned. And that's not to say that people can't do that. People absolutely can. But do what. I want to do what I enjoy, and if I feel a little bit bad about something, I don't want to do it.
No. This episode of Wrestling Life is brought to you in partnership with our friends over at Legacy Sports Nutrition. Take your physical and mental performance to the next level with Test X9, the natural testosterone booster. Clinically proven, Test X9 from Legacy Sports Nutrition is NSF certified, third-party lab tested, and made in the US of A. And it's brought to you by friends of the show, 3-time world champion Nick Aldis and 10-time world champion Mickie James. Nick developed and uses these products himself, so they work, and he shows you how over at legacysubs.com, with links to clinical studies on each of the 9 key ingredients. No bull, no bro science, just facts. It's time to level up your strength, energy, libido and drive now with Test X9 from Legacy Sports Nutrition. And if you want to really level up, go for the ultimate test stack, adding T-Assist, a pro-grade estrogen inhibitor and test enhancer, and the best-selling sleep aid Recovery PM, and discover why improving your sleep is the key to unlocking your mental and physical potential. So stop settling for average. Go to legacysups.com now and use the promo code WrestlingLife for 10% off your entire order. That's promo code WrestlingLife. And if you subscribe to have it shipped every 30 days, you can still get the discount every single time. So head on over now to legacysups.com and level up with Legacy. So, lessons learnt. You mentioned to me before locker room etiquette. That is a minefield, I'm sure, to kind of traverse. What are some of the gaffes you've made along the way?
Not shaking hands with people. Not saying hello to everybody. And not from any kind of wanting to ignore people, but from it not occurring to me that that's a thing. That's a thing. If you walk into a building, introduce yourself to everybody, or allow people to introduce themselves to you. I had
it's interesting how entrenched it is, because when I was speaking to Nathan Cruz on the last episode, he said how he went up and sat next to Hulk Hogan, and Hulk Hogan said, "Hi, I'm Terry."
Yeah,
it's like, yeah, I'm familiar with you.
I know exactly where I was sitting when I heard that piece of that interview. I was doing the rounds in my car.
Brilliant.
Introduce yourself to everybody. I'm the guy that gets sent to talk to people. So Steve will be, I need you to speak to this guy and I need you to tell him this. And it could be a change to something. It will always be at the point where that person is talking through their match with their opponent, and there's a circle around these people because they will be going through their moves and their routines. And I always equate it to my kids standing next to the swings, waiting for the person to get off the swing, inadvertently intimidating them to get off the swing. I just have to stand just slightly outside, wait for an appropriate time, go, really sorry to interrupt, chaps. I know that you're massive and very, very scary, but I have this very important thing to tell you. I hope it's not a bad time. Realizing that not everybody wants kind of behind the scenes photos taken and put online. I remember getting an email from a very famous masked wrestler at the time to say, "Do you realize you just put a picture of me sitting next to the ring?" And in my brain, it's incredibly intimate, black and white, amazing behind the scenes photos. I've just ruined this guy's gimmick. No, I will always be kind of beholden to the ring crew. Always. Have I ever put up a wrestling ring? No. Is that part of paying your dues? Absolutely. I'm very aware that I've never put up a wrestling ring. But when that show finishes, I'm sweeping that floor. I'm putting those chairs away. I'm mucking in and trying to be one of the last people to leave, because that's the least I can do. It's a very unique environment. But be confident, be respectful. Don't ask too many questions about matches. Or about what it was like to wrestle that very famous wrestler. Progress used to have a slogan. There's only one rule in progress, which was don't be a dick. There you go. Should be a good human being.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the making sure that you acknowledge everybody and go around and shake their hand and introduce yourself, or at least be available for that person to introduce themselves to you.
Yeah, which is a great rule for life, not just pro wrestling. That's just a great rule for life, isn't it?
Yeah.
You wear many hats, right? So we've talked about wrestling, we've talked about stand-up comedy, but how you and I first met was the world of the state agency. They're not kind of typical bedfellows, kind of the state agent by day, wrestling promoter by weekend, but somehow you've made it work, and you've made it work for a long career. And what I've really loved is how you've actually managed to merge, the estate agency business, Andrews, that you work for, with lots of the community outreach of FPW and actually lots of the fundraising. And, it's been really encouraging to see that, because obviously wrestling has always had such a reputation as this kind of, it's hard to be a wrestling fan because it gets mocked and derided a lot, and actually it's a real legitimate art form. But you'd always see a business sponsoring the local rugby team or the local football team. But the idea of sponsoring a wrestling show feels outside of the box. What are some of kind of the crossover skills that you found between your day job selling property and your weekend role selling shows?
I guess, I mean, it's similar to getting into agency in the first place. I was in retail for 8 years before getting into agency. Retail gave me a thick skin. You know, if you've had a Snickers thrown at you at 10 o'clock at night because you're arguing over a late fee for a VHS, guys, you know, you're probably going to be able to take a little bit more than maybe other people. But it's people skills. I mean, I don't know, 7 or 8 houses a week, sitting at people's kitchen tables and listening to their stories and finding out what makes them tick and finding out why they want to move and why they love this house in the first place and what's important to them. And all those people have interests. And I'm a bit of a sponge for things like that. So if I'm sat in somebody's kitchen and I look over and we're in the era of canvases with quotes on, Ben. Don't know if you're aware.
Mm-hmm.
But we are. And whether it's if life gives us lemons, make lemonade, or live, love, laugh, or whatever it is, in amongst all that, there'll be song lyrics, movie quotes. And that's my thing. So I will suck up my environment and then, oh, that's from the Libertines album. Yeah. Oh, brilliant band. I saw them in 1990, blah, 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 blah. There you go. Straight away. We're talking. Similarly with wrestling, it's convincing people that you're legit and that you care and that you won't wreck their venue and that, you know, your posters aren't going to bring ill repute on their establishment, and that you'll pay them.
Mm-hmm.
So Steve is also in sales, massively so. And he's on the road constantly throughout the week, selling to venues. He's in the food and recruitment industry, but yeah, very, very similar. Our styles are very, very different, and we acknowledge that to the point where we will ask each other to contact certain people or make certain calls or, you know, get in touch with people. But at the end of the day, they're people industries because you want somebody to buy into you. Yeah, a colleague of mine always used to say, people don't buy. What do we do here? What do we do? And then the rookie would say, we sell houses. No, you sell viewings. You phone somebody and you convince them that what you've got is so good and that you understand their needs so much that you change their week and you change what they do on a Saturday. The house will then sell itself. But if you're able to be that genuine and convincing in estate agency, you just move that to all the other facets of your life. And people can see when it's sales for sales sake, even with charity connections. You know, let's not paint this with any kind of Samaritan's brush. There's always an ulterior motive. An association with a charity is a positive thing. We know this. When I teamed up with St. Raphael's Hospice, met up with their head of marketing, and it was so refreshing to have a conversation with somebody that went, let's not call this anything that it's not. We would love your input and we'd love donations, but equally we know that you want to associate yourselves with us because with that comes an audience as well. So as long as we acknowledge it and put it out there, brilliant. And that's been really rewarding. Quite apart from working with charities is genuinely rewarding, but let's not kid ourselves. We want something as well. We want the people that support that charity to be curious and come and see our show. If that ends up with, you know, more donations, more the better.
Sure. So FPW, you know, it's now having a resurgence. You've got a big show coming up. Probably by the time this episode drops, it'll be out. You're looking to do 3 or 4 shows a year? Is that your model, sticking with the kind of?
I think so.
Yeah.
Four's always my ideal. Steve loves 5. I don't know why. He just he just
Mm.
does. Um, I'm always the resistant of the 3, more resistant of the 3, I would say. For more, I think less is more. I like to keep people going. Oh, I can't wait for the next show. If it's next month, oh, I can afford to miss it because there'll be one.
Mm.
Another one. I love that format of doing. So it used to be February, May, July, October, and then likes to stick Jingle Bell Brawl in at the end. Um, but yeah,
As if
we'll
Christmas
see.
isn't busy enough. Yeah.
Exactly.
Where would you like to? Where would you like to? Do you have an idea for where you'd like to see FPW in 5 years' time? Or are you just happy to go with the flow and enjoy the ride now?
I'm I'm happy to go with the flow, but again, I would be, I think, kidding myself if I didn't at least acknowledge that. Wouldn't it be nice to consistently sell out that venue? If we're able to consistently sell out that venue, wouldn't it be nice to potentially look for a slightly larger venue? Not again jumping the shark and doing arenas or anything like that. Um, but for me, what I want currently is for our previous audience from, I mean, it's bonkers, Ben, to see kids that were, mocking me. Will Wilkins, I'm going to call him out, at the age of 7. And at the last show, he bought his family the tickets. I'm pretty sure he drove them there, uh,
But
and bought
but
and
still
bought
mocking
drinks
you.
for everyone, but
Yeah.
still mocking
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
and
Good.
towering over me. So it's having that previous audience come back from a nostalgic. We felt excited as a family to come to these shows back then. Let's do that again, even if it's from a purely nostalgic point of view. So I'd love to see more of our previous crowd come back, but also have that new element who has now walked past our new venue and seen our banner and gone, oh, a friend of mine went here, said it was brilliant. This must be what he was talking about. Scan the QR code, buy tickets. So I think consistently selling out would be amazing. But for me, it's successfully replicating the environment that we loved so much back then. And I think we've got there. I think we have got there. But again, we need to be able to prove it show after show after show. So for me, I'm going to say consistently selling out. For Steve, it will be let's do 12 shows a year and let's sell out, I don't know, Ron Albert Hall. He's a
Um.
different Steve. He's he's a
Yeah.
contained Steve now, Ben.
Yeah. Look, I've been to your shows before. It's in the past. I can't wait to come to more of them. I mean, I can only vouch for the brilliant kind of community feel, but also the quality of the night and the show you put on. And I wish you nothing but success. And it's wonderful to have you on as one of the very first guests for this, which is a kind of fledgling endeavor for me, which I think has a very big future ahead of it. I know fan support is vital to independent promotions thriving. And obviously, we live in a world today where you don't have to be close to Surrey to support a no FPW. So, how can my audience that's listening all around the world connect with you, keep in touch, and support Future Pro Wrestling?
So yeah, I guess my kids mock me for this all the time because I'm still a Facebook user. But oddly, that's kind of our biggest community as where people have been used to seeing updates. So yeah, Future Pro Wrestling on Facebook, FPW UK on Instagram. I think am I Matt Burden 17? I think I'm Matt Burden 17 on Instagram. But yeah, Facebook is always going to be the one. And we still get a ton of traffic on there and a ton of interaction, which we're super, super grateful for. But yeah, we're not TikToking yet, Ben. We're
One
not.
day. What's your
No,
website?
futureprowrestling.com.
There you go. Nice and easy. Well, look, thank you so much, Matt, for joining me today. It's been wonderful. I've learned a lot. I could chat to you all day, and we'll have another conversation, I'm sure. But that's been episode 2, and I think it's been more Ghostbusters 2 than Caddyshack 2, to be honest. And I say that as a lover of Ghostbusters 2.
I'm a big Vigo supporter. I am. I think purple ooze is the way to go.
He was a wrestler, wasn't he, as well?
Was he?
That played
I
Vigo.
didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh,
He's still alive. Book him.
Look at you. Yeah, Vigo versus Terry Striker.
There you go. Pumpkin on a pole.
100%.
So look, that's been my very special guest today, Matt Burden from Future Pro Wrestling. Do check out futureprowrestling.com and check them out on Facebook, especially because Facebook still exists and it's still selling tickets. Thank you to my brilliant producer, Jeff Easton from Tall Oak Productions, who brings Wrestling Life to life. This show is a new show and it's relying on you guys to support it and move it forward. So it really helps if you can join us on social media. We've got a really easy handle at Wrestling Life Online, and we have the hashtag Wrestling Life Pod. So please subscribe to our channels. We appreciate you. So that is it for today. I've been Ben Veal. My special guest has been Future Pro Wrestling's Matt Burden. This has been Wrestling Life. We'll be back again soon, sharing more talk from real talent. Until then, be good to each other.